What's going on, everybody? Chroma Rust here, back again. Have some more Diablo 3 content for you. So I know everybody wants to find legendaries like the pros, but there are some things that you're going to have to understand to be able to do this. And so these are some of the mechanics that I'm going to go ahead and talk about with you today.
So before we get into talking about the aspects that are going to be affecting our item drops, I think it best that we probably have a solid understanding on how the item drop system itself works, as to hopefully leave no stone unturned and at least most questions answered. Now when we kill a monster, that monster is going to have a percent chance to drop us an item. Let's say RNG is playing to our favor, it does drop us an item. Well, now before the item even hits the ground, the game has to go through multiple procedures to determine, quite a few things. The first thing is going to be, what type of item are we going to get? Are we going to get gold or a gem or a potion? Now, let's say for our case though, the item generator goes ahead and selects us a piece of gear. Now the game has to select, well, what type of gear are we going to get? Is it going to be a helmet or a shoulder or an amulet? Now the game always taking into account at this point smart loot. All smart loot is, let's say we're playing a barbarian, in that case we're going to be much more likely to find, well, barb set items, mighty weapons, and just items with strength. First, when we're playing a wizard, in that case we're going to be much more likely to find, well, wizard set items, wands, and just items with intelligence. So once the type of gear has been selected and the class that it'll be for, the game has to now determine, well, the quality of the item. This is the fun part. Is it going to be a set item or a legendary? Now, not all legendaries are going to be found at the same rate. This is just something that's worth noting. If we take a look at a Compass Rose versus Stone of Jordan, well, that Compass Rose is going to be dropping much more often due to it having a higher percent chance to drop when a legendary ring has been selected versus that Stone of Jordan. Now, if we're lucky, we're going to get the legendary. If not, being most cases, as we know, the game is going to have to continue on down the line, and it's going to check, is it going to be a 6 property rare? If no, will it be a 5 prop or 4 prop? Then it's going to move into, is it going to be a magic item or blue item, as most would say? Then finally, is it a white item or a broken piece of gear? Properties being things such as strength, crit chance, life on hit, just to name a few of them. Now, you still can't have your item. The game is not touched down yet because, well, it now has to determine what exact stats are you going to get. Are you going to get strength, crit chance, and crit damage, or are you going to get strength, attack speed, and life regeneration? And then the game has to determine, well, what is the quality of those rolls going to be? Are you going to get 400 strength or 500 strength? This is all predetermined before the identify process on set items and legendaries. Now, all these same systems are going to be in place as they are for killing a monster, for when you click on clouds or chests or indestructible, as they are for killing elites and bosses. The main difference between them all is going to be their percent chance to drop you an item. If we take a look at a Colossal Galgor, he's going to be much more likely to give you an item versus a Tormented Stinger due to the Tormented Stingers spawning in large packs and being much easier to kill. So now we all have a pretty solid understanding on how the item drop system works. We're ready to look at ways to manipulate that system to our favor to help us find more legendaries. And first on the list is going to be Torment. Now if you're playing in hard, normal, expert, or master, you're going to be receiving no bonuses to your legendary find. But once you're ready to level them up and start tearing through Torment, well, you're going to start receiving 15% bonus for every increasing Torment level. Now this bonus is multiplicative and not additive. That works to our favor. That means that when we enter Torment 2, we're not going to be receiving a 30% bonus, but a 32% bonus. To get to these numbers, you just take your 15% bonus from Torment 1, your 15% bonus from Torment 2, you multiply them, and you come up with a roughly 32% chance. Now to make sure we're all on the same page, we will go from Torment 2 up to Torment 3. We'll take our 32%, multiply by 15% once again, and we'll be coming up with a roughly 52% bonus to our legendary find. Now, numbers and percentages and all that are great, but let's look at this in terms of time. Let's say we have 2 hours. We're going to find a legendary every 2 hours in normal, hard, expert, or master, them all having the same legendary drop chance. Once we enter Torment 1, we're ready to subtract that 15% bonus from our 120 minutes or 2 hours, and we're going to come up with a legendary every roughly 104 minutes. We do the same thing for Torment 2. We'd subtract our 32% bonus, and we'd be coming up with a legendary every 91 minutes. That's nearly shaving off a half-hour playtime and finding your next legendary just for playing in Torment 2 versus normal, hard, expert, or master. Now if we want to go up to Torment 6, we're going to be finding a legendary every 52 minutes. Now you can tell from this example that playing in the higher Torment levels is well worth the benefits received as long as the gear permits, as always. Nephilim Rifts are going to impact the way that we find legendaries, and in a really powerful way. Just from entering a rift, we're going to receive double the legendaries. Now I want to read from a post from Lylira, who's a community manager over on the official forums, and while the numbers are outdated, she sums up the way that Torment and Rifts impact each other, and she does it in a very informative way. So the 100% chance the legendary find in Nephilim Rifts is multiplicative and will actually stack with the scaling legendary drop bonuses in Torment 1 through 6. This means if you're playing in a Rift through normal through master, you'll have a 100% bonus to your legendary drops. If you're playing in a Rift through Torment 1, you're going to have a 130% bonus to your legendary drops. If you're playing in a Rift through Torment 2, you're going to have a 165% bonus to your legendary drops. So she was also kind enough to go ahead and show us how the math works out. Looking at our Torment legendary drop bonuses, we take each difficulty's drop chance and we're going to multiply it by 100% or by 2. So we take our Torment 1's 15% and we'd now be getting 130% bonus. Torment 2's 32% would now be 165% bonus to our legendary find. Now let's go ahead and take our same scenario where we're going to stick with our 2 hours to find a legendary in normal through master while not in a rift. Once we did enter that rift, we're going to now find a legendary every hour. Torment 1, we're going to find a legendary every 52 minutes. This is the same drop times as Torment 6 while not in a rift. Now if we want to look at Torment 6 while we are in a rift, we're going to find a legendary every 26 minutes. That's cutting our times down by 80% to find a legendary. Now this is assuming that your gear is scaling with the difficulty and that your clear times were similar throughout them. Now Magic Find used to play a really vital role in the way that we found our legendaries. Nowadays though, I'd personally go as far as to say that it actually hinders your endgame gear more than it's helping you find those legendaries. Now I want to get into why, but first we need to have a solid understanding on Magic Find and how it works, as well to be able to understand how something like that could be possible. So to jump right in here, Magic Find is going to affect the quality of item that you get from killing a monster, not the quantity or the item's rolls. So you will not be seeing more items, but you will be seeing more legendary items. Now Magic Find is not going to affect the items that come from the environment, the chests, the armor racks, the weapon racks, the vases, and so on. Magic Find plays no part in the way that we find those items. Now with the introduction of patch 2.0, Blizzard revamped the way that the Magic Find system works. So let's take a look at a scenario where we have 100% Magic Find. Just to kind of keep things simple, sticking with our same 2-hour legendary drop chance, well now we'd be expecting to see a legendary about every hour, the same way that Nephilim Rift's bonus works. But here lies one of the problems with Magic Find. That is not the way the system works. As I said, Blizzard revamped the system, so I want to take a look at one of Travis Day's posts. He's the Diablo 3 game developer, and he sums up the way the MF system works. Magic Find will apply 100% to blue items, 30% to yellow items, and only 10% to our legendary items. This means someone with 300% Magic Find will end up finding roughly 30% more legendaries than the player with 0 Magic Find. Now to me, 30% more legendaries really sounds great, but how are we to achieve 300% Magic Find, that being the cap for what we can get from gear? Well, in patch 2.0 and beyond, the simple answer is you just can't do it. So let's go ahead and stick with that same scenario though, where we have 100% Magic Find. Something that's a little bit more achievable through the use of a Nagel ring, a topaz in your helm, having a couple people in your party. Knowing that Magic Find is only going to affect our legendary drops by 1/10 of our Magic Find, we then take those same set of numbers that we've been coming up with and then this time multiply them by, well, 10%. Now here's something kind of interesting to take a look at though. Let's say we plan to play in Torment 6 Rifts only for 1,000 hours with 100% Magic Find. Now I know it's a lot of time for some and probably not much for others, but let's just say we plan to do it. How many more legendaries would we find versus the player with 0 Magic Find? Well, that player would find 2,308 legendaries over the course of those 1,000 hours, where we would find 2,500 legendaries. It's like 192 more legendaries for 1,000 hours playtime. Not really that much. But then we're going to start to notice this reoccurring trend in Reaper of Souls where a lot of the items that we get are not only coming from monsters but also from the environment. And well, as we know, Magic Find does not play any part in items that we get from the environment. So now we're going to have to take a good 20 to 30% off of our additional 192 legendaries that we found. Now, I don't want to harp on why Magic Find is bad because Magic Find in and of itself is not bad. The problem comes in when you're trying to stack it on endgame gear. So the first problem, as we know now, is Magic Find does not affect the items that we get from the environment. The second, it's kind of a two-parter. Magic Find took a hit in its effectiveness, also in its accessibility, meaning that, well, it's going to be harder to get and it really doesn't do much now. And the third one kind of goes hand in hand with the first two, and that is, well, the Magic Find that a Nagel Ring has could never compete with a Stone of Jordan. We need to be able to kill monsters fast, and the hit and effectiveness from taking our Stone of Jordan off and throwing out our Nagel Ring is just going to be way too great for our gear or that Magic Find to ever overcome. Thus not actually helping us find more legendaries per hour, but actually decreasing our legendaries per hour. Now that we have a better understanding on how Magic Find works, we need to explore all the ways to get Magic Find. There are 4 ways to increase it. I'll break them down into groups. When you're in a multiplayer game, you will receive a 10% bonus to your Magic Find for every additional player. So if there's 1 additional player, you'll receive 10%. If there's 2 additional players, you'll receive 20%, all the way up to the maximum of 30% when you're in a 4-player game.
Next up, shrines. When you click on a shrine, you and your allies will receive a temporary buff that will persist for a short period of time. Each shrine you find will only provide its effects once, and you cannot receive multiple buffs of the same type. With that being said, one of the shrines you find throughout Sanctuary will be a Fortune Shrine. It'll grant you 25% increased magic and gold find.
Now, whether it's worth it or not to actually stack Magic Find on gear is going to really vary from player to player. It's going to depend on the situation that your gear is currently in. Let's say you're new to the game, you're using rare rings, you find a Nagel Ring, it's probably just going to be an all-around upgrade for you, and by all means, obviously, you're going to want to go ahead and use it. Now, maybe you're in a slightly more tricky situation where you've been playing for 100, 150 hours, you're using legendary rings, and well, you come across a Nagel Ring, and it's like a 1% DPS loss. And in your clear times, you've timed it, and it's about 2% slower. Your Nagel Ring has 50 Magic Find on it. Well, that 50 Magic Find is going to give you 5% more legendaries, and only being 2% slower clear times. Well, that 5% more legendaries is going to more than compensate for that 2% slower clear times. Or maybe you're in the third situation where you come across the Nagel Ring and you just can't use it, or it's just so bad. Well, that ring could actually still have potential, so don't brim it yet, or for the new guys, don't forget soul it yet, because your precious still could have purpose.
Do you ever sit back and ask yourself, what are those creepy people doing for me while I'm running around Sanctuary, other than chanting the same 5 things like, that was a worthy foe, glorious.
That was a worthy foe, glorious.
Well, I'm here to tell you. For stats such as plus experience, magic find, and gold find that you gear your followers with, you're going to receive 20% of that bonus for your character. So let's say you were to equip a Nagel Ring on your follower that had 50% more magic find. Well, you're going to receive 10% magic find for your character, thus giving you 1% more legendaries. And is it really worth it? Well, it's a free stat. Now, our legendary drops, as we know, are not going to be as perfect as the math I showed previously because, well, sometimes we're going to come across legendaries within just a couple minutes of each other. Other times we're going to get real lucky and 2 legendaries are going to fall off the same elite pack or same Rift Guardian. But then there's going to be the torturous times where you go 2+ hours and you haven't found yourself a set or a legendary item. Now, there's actually going to be a system in place to help counteract those torturous times to prevent you from going like 6+ hours without finding a legendary. Now, this system in place has been referred to as the pity legendary by the Diablo community. The system basically works as follows. You go 2 hours, you haven't found a legendary. Well, over the course of the next 2 hours, the game is going to start increasing your legendary drop chance every 5 minutes, let's say, until you are 100% guaranteed to find yourself a legendary. Now, this system that works behind the scenes is pretty hush-hush, and we don't know a lot about it, so I want to read from two of Travis Day's posts where he actually is talking about this particular system. Now, first, the clarification. The timer system that works behind the scenes is meant to be just that, behind the scenes. No, you cannot AFK the system. There are a lot of moving pieces to it, and we talked about it extensively before we implemented it to guarantee it's not exploitable. At the heart of Diablo, it's a game about slaughtering demons and getting random cool loot. This system should never be experienced by 99% of the population. It is there for the 1%. Like the 1% really needs help. Who just get really bad random rolls for an excessively long period of time. If we want you to get a legendary every 2 hours, the system basically says, okay, it's been double, triple that time, just help them out. Now the next post by Travis Day actually mentions one of the ways to keep the pity legendaries clock ticking. We added a system in the expansion that tracks the amount of time fighting creatures without finding a legendary, and at a certain period in time, we will start to slowly increase the legendary drop rate. So the more time fighting monsters, we will increase your legendary find. But once a legendary is found, not a crafting plan or material, well, then that legendary timer is going to reset itself until once again we find another legendary.
Topic 6. Farming like a boss, aka going ham.
The one true way for any player to maximize the efficiency of their legendaries per hour is going to be, well, through maximizing the efficiency of your playtime. There's hardcores, there's casuals. The difference between the two is the hardcores, while they're in the game, they're actually playing and they're grinding hard. Whereas the casuals, they're talking, which is fine. But if you're going for more legendaries per hour, you really need to hit the monsters and you need to keep hitting them hard. Now there's going to be another thing, and that is running around with cap movement speed. Cap from gear and Paragon points is going to be 25%, so anything past that point is going to be a complete and total waste. Now this is not including the legendary stats such as that Chill and Chain would give. That additional 40% movement speed that you see on this belt is going to be able to exceed that 25% cap. Now while damage may be king, movement speed is still crucial. Now the last thing that I have for you is, well, it gets a little bit more tricky on what difficulty is going to be the most efficient for you. I'm going to start out with the easy one, assuming that legendaries is all you care about. If you're not playing in Torment or you're just not able to, you're going to want to play in normal. It's going to be your best bet, well, because all non-Torment difficulties have the same legendary drop chance. But now, what about the players who are in Torment? This is where it gets even a little bit more tricky, and that is going to be the rule of 14 is what I like to use. Now, it's not perfect. As I said, there's going to be so many different types of gear, play styles, classes, that the rule of 14 I found is what works for me. Now that is, if you plan to go up in Torment level, the overall legendary drop rate is going to increase by 15%. Therefore, if your clear times are only 14% slower, you're still going to be receiving around the same legendaries per hour, and you're not actually going to be hindering yourself. Now on the flip side of things, if you think maybe the difficulty is too hard and you want to go down in Torment, well, we're going to be losing 13% of our overall legendary drop chance. Therefore, you want to be 14% or faster as to once again not lose any legendaries per hour.
Alright everyone, well that's it for me. While I could elaborate more on some of these topics, I was trying to keep the discussion relevant, and I know this was a bit long-winded for some of you. I do hope that everyone is able to walk away from this with a little more knowledge than when the video started. If you feel there's a topic that needs further discussion, or if you have any ideas for future videos, please do post them in the comments below. Also, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them as best as I can. Thank you for watching, and once again, I'm Chrome on Rust. This is Core Expert Gaming.
And you all, have a great day.